As you've seen around the country, millions of learners back at school, but also many young people who should be in school but have decided not to go back to school and basically dropping out of the education system. As you know, around 40% of children who start grade 1 every year don't actually get through to matric. They drop out along the way. Merle Mansfield is at the Zero Dropout campaign. Merle, good afternoon to you, and thanks very much indeed for your time. We've been discussing this problem for a long time. Is there any indication that the situation is improving? Are we still seeing 40% of our children leaving school too early?
Good afternoon, Stephen, and good afternoon to your viewers. I think that we have increased our awareness of the issue. We still do have debate around what's causing the issue within the country. And I think that we are seeing real kind of movement towards understanding what it takes to keep a child in school, particularly in South Africa. Part of it being academic losses in terms of teaching and learning, and part of it being real socioeconomic and psychosocial challenges that learners face within society and within their daily lives.
There are certain things that these learners are facing in a way that can be very difficult. I mean, firstly, in the schools that they're in, and I'm sure someone somewhere has a graph of dropout rate by school. What do we know about the schools that have high dropout rates? What kind of teaching are children getting?
So we see that dropout really peaks within grade 10 and 11, so in our FET phase, and particularly within our quintile 1 to 3 schools, so looking at schools that are no-fee or low-fee schools that are often serving some of our most vulnerable children. And a lot of that is compounded by the fact that many of these children also have already had a very difficult journey through school by the time they get to grade 10. So about 60% of those children in 2019 and 2022, it was found, were about 3 or 4 years older for their grade, meaning that they've already repeated those grades, twice or thrice. And so that difficulty and trying to hold on to the opportunity of schooling without successfully completing a year makes it hard for children to maintain their engagement in the classroom. And so essentially they drop out without the necessary support that they require.
And I suppose the idea of failing a year at school, not being able to go through, becoming older than many of the other people in your class, that must be a huge factor in this. I mean, it must just sort of draw inspiration from you.
Absolutely. I think that, the global research shows us that dropout is not a singular event, and often the disengagement within a child peaks and grows over a very long period of time. And because we haven't really cracked in our country how to respond to disengagement at an individual level early on enough, we see that compounded effect in grade 10 and 11 then results in the eventual consequence, which is dropout. Imagine being a 16-year-old still struggling to read, having foundational literacy, not having comprehension, and sitting within a classroom incredibly frustrated when your teacher is teaching at a level that you are unable to keep up with. Compound with that a difficult home life, or really struggling with bullying, or feeling isolated within a school system. I think that all of those issues, and many of them navigated by young people throughout their lives, is difficult in our school system. Our most recent literacy and foundational literacy and numeracy results does not look good. I mean, last year we had huge discussions on the pupils results, with 81% of grade 4s not being able to read for meaning. And just last year, we had the reading panel, publishing their report suggesting that grade 1s, approximately 60% of them, aren't able to even recognize the alphabet letters correctly. So I think that we have a real issue with kind of learning foundations and teaching and learning taking place well enough in the foundational phases, and then helping learners as they progress through school to be able to then grasp the bigger concepts, as they need to in later years, as well as helping them to navigate a lot of very difficult circumstances that many of them face within their lives while trying to maintain their grip on schooling.
So to fix all of this requires a huge national effort. It's one of these moments when sort of everyone needs to be involved. Do you think sort of national leaders understand this? Is there any political will to fix some of these really big problems?
Well, very recently, just yesterday, the DBE spokesperson Elijah Mhlanga released an op-ed which was basically suggesting that we shouldn't add dropout to the conversation when we talk about matric results. And I think that one of the things we really need to wrap our minds around is talking about the education system and the schooling system and its health, with dropout as intentionally as possible, and not thinking about dropout as an indicator of our failure, but definitely looking at it as a way for us to improve our education system. Tracking dropout intentionally will mean that we will be able to respond to risk early on enough to help with bolstering our retention rates. I think that we have seen a lot more positive responses in the sector, and civil society, as alive as it is in South Africa, has really come on board to hold up, the flag for dropout prevention and talking about the issue. I think that we do need to see a lot more financial allocation towards things like psychosocial support in schools, individual development plans for learners who are academically struggling, particularly additional support in our quintile 1 to 3 schools with teaching aids, and additional things that I think are necessary for foundational literacy and numeracy to be taken on, quite directly. These things are incredibly important. We see a lot of it in the talk and in kind of the grandstanding around, we need to become a reading nation and that kind of thing, but we haven't really seen the kind of monetary allocations to those interventions yet. And so that would become an important next step if we're really wanting to tackle dropout and retention in South Africa in a real way.
So we know, and we've known for a long time, that we have this problem of dropout. Are we seeing, is your prediction then that of all of the children who are starting grade 1 today, and everyone's got pictures of young, cute children in their uniforms, that in 12 years' time we'll still have a 40% dropout rate?
Well, the hope is that we don't. I think that one of the key things that we need to work on is thinking about how children flow through the system. So when we think about the throughput rate, we're needing to improve that. And so when you start and when you finish, that allotted amount of time that learners are using that well. I think that part of the suggested changes in policy that are on the table at the moment, which looks at things like the 3-stream model, where we would stream learners into different academic avenues that are suited to their skills, like vocational training or technical training, I think is an important aspect that we need to look at. We also need to think about our compulsory school-going age policy, which suggests that learners, when they are reaching grade 9 or 16, whichever comes first, have the option to legally exit the school system. At the moment, there's no exit certificate for that. And also, we know that the chances of young people accessing post-school opportunities at that juncture is very, very low. And so increasing that kind of compulsory school-going age up into grade 12 is going to be an important consideration. And then the third real intervention that we need to think about is repetition and progression within our country, which looks at how many times a learner is repeating a grade, but also that grade repetition actually becomes part of a remediation plan, and that intervention is actually reaching an individual learner, and that they are not just sitting in a classroom becoming more and more lost year on year and eventually dropping out of school. So those are 3 really important policy shifts and interventions that we could nationally adopt and work on that will make a significant difference to dropout in the next 12 years.
Merle Mansfield from the Zero Dropout campaign, thanks very much indeed. Do appreciate it. Well, let's see.